Alexis, thank you so much for joining us on what has been a very busy week for you.
Of course, happy to be here.
You announced some news within the last 24 hours involving Dig. Can you tell us what's going on there?
Yeah, don't call it a comeback, but my former arch rival CEO, Kevin Rose, and I have decided to buy back Dig.com and rebuild it. And we announced the news to much fanfare on the internet about 24 hours ago. It was a lot of fun. It was great. All the memes, all the nostalgia, it was a great response.
But you said don't call it nostalgia. Why did you want to make this move?
Well, you know, Kevin and I have got to know each other over the last few years. And I actually really didn't like him for the first probably like 5 years of our coexistence as rival CEOs, right? I mean, it was Dig versus Reddit for most of 2005 and about 2010. And I never spoke to him. Never actually had a conversation with the guy up until maybe 5 years ago. We started talking and I realized we actually had a lot more in common than not. And I actually had a lot of respect for the guy and we just hit it off. And every now and then we kind of flirted with this idea. And then it finally came together, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago. And he said, hey, I think I got the domain. I think I got it. Like, I want to do this. I want to do it with you. And I just said, hell yeah, let's go. And yeah, it should be a lot of fun. We want to make the internet fun again and kind of take it back to where it was in those, you know, mid-aughts when online communities, all these things were still pretty nascent and the vibes were just a lot better.
The vibes were better then, but the political environment was different then. We've become a lot more polarized. So do you think technology has the ability to overcome the polarization that we see in society?
Look, that is a tall order. Do I think technology can overcome it? We'll see. Do I think technology could do a better job of helping ameliorate our worst instincts? Yes. And, you know, I always take this back to analog examples. And for me, online communities are like an infinite convention hall. So imagine you walk into the Javits Center, if you're a New Yorker, and you have this infinite set of rooms. And each one has a different, you know, theme to it. There's a bunch of Pokemon fans in one. There's a bunch of Yankees fans in another. And in these offline analog worlds, you have this way that people get feedback in real time, right? If you walk into the Pokemon room, you start up a conversation with some people and you start, you know, ranting about some conspiracy theory. In most of those situations, the other people dressed as like Pikachu are gonna be like, okay, cool, bro, but like we're here for the vibes and for Pikachu, like, you know, and they'll go find another conversation, right? You get these social cues offline that let you know, like, you're free to say that weird stuff, but it's not really what people want to hear. Whereas traditional social media really just amplifies, you know, engagement bait and sort of our worst impulses. And so the way we're thinking about Dig is not just bringing back the nostalgia of that time, but also how do we use new technology like AI to let users have more ownership over their experience, but then also get that real-time feedback, because AI does actually know when you hit submit. It can actually say to you, hey, listen, Alexis, just so you know, based on the things that you are saying right now, only 10% of this community is gonna see what you're saying, because they've opted out of seeing that crazy flat earther stuff. Let's just pick on, sorry, flat earth people and pick on that. And you know, we can actually use this technology to create a better experience for consumers of these sites, and also a better experience to hopefully help people better self-regulate. Basically get that, you know, one of the things I saw often building Reddit was when we actually talked to users who were, you know, getting online, coming on the site and just, you know, going at it with another user in the threads, a lot of the time they were just having a bad day at work. And, you know, they were letting out some steam and taking on some random user. And, you know, that's a very manual process today, everywhere, right? It requires community managers, mods, all this other stuff. You know, you can use this technology now to envision a way that that happens actually nearly in real time from an AI that's like, again, giving you that feedback right when you hit submit, and hopefully helping folks better regulate. And you know, I think the closer we can bring feedback that we would get offline to the online world, I think the better it's going to be, because it removes the distance that online communication provides is a blessing in a lot of ways, but I think we've seen some of the darker sides of it too, and we'll see how it goes.
We have seen some dark sides. And speaking of social media, there's some other news that broke this week that Frank McCourt said that you have joined his bid to acquire TikTok's US operations as a strategic advisor specializing in social media.
Yes.
Is this true? And
It is true.
why did you want to get involved in that?
Look, I have said for a long time, TikTok would be better off, or excuse me, US TikTok would be better off not in the hands of the Chinese government. And so, look, I've been very publicly supportive of someone taking this over who is not, in bed with the Chinese government. And look, threw my hat in the ring. Frank made a really compelling pitch. He's a big fan of crypto. I seeded Coinbase back in 2012, so I've been in the space for quite some time. I do think there's an opportunity to take a platform as big as TikTok and bring it on chain and reimagine what it looks like to bring all those users into a world where, again, from their user experience standpoint, they don't need to know anything about wallets or blockchains. Like the tech details are not important to users, but the user experience of actually owning your identity and your profile and the sort of reputation that you build there and being able to transport it, that's powerful. And so, look, I obviously hope we win the bid. I know there are lots of people bidding on it. Elon joked in reply to my post that there are more people bidding on TikTok than not, and there might be some truth to that. But look, as long as as an American, I'd be happy no matter what with an outcome that gets it in the hands of Americans. But I guess we'll see.
We'll see. Do you think you'll get it?
I mean, as a founder, you're always a little too optimistic. So, I can hope so at least.
You mentioned Elon. You have some peers in Silicon Valley who have changed some of their diversity, equity, inclusion focuses over the last few months in response to some changes we've seen from the federal government. You're here at the Forbes 3050 Summit talking about inclusion and investing in women.
Yeah.
What's your response to your Silicon Valley peers who might be stepping back from the initiatives that you seem to really support?
Look, I do think you have an opportunity right now for the leaders who understand the real why, which is your organization is going to be better off if you're creating the broadest funnel for talent you can. And they're actually going to do really well right now because I think there's a lot of short-sighted organizations that are just kind of following the cultural trend that are now not, they're basically going to miss out on a lot of tremendous talent. One of the things that I think plenty of organizations were doing right for a very long time was understanding this isn't just about box checking. This isn't about an acronym. This is about actually building in policies in your organization that support a wide range of people. And I've talked about paid family leave quite openly, quite publicly, and also building out a system where you're attracting the broadest range of talent to do the best work possible. I think the biggest sham is that we have somehow identified these types of goals with not being meritocratic. Those of us who've been out here building multi-billion-dollar companies with an eye towards having diversity, equity, and inclusion, we're hiring for greatness. That never stopped. That was always the number one way to build highly successful organizations. We just moved in different ways and tried to build differently. And like I said, broaden the funnel, have different policies, just build better. And so I think the pendulum is going to swiftly shift back in the next few years because the organizations that are hiring with this mindset, we're going to have our pick of so many tremendous people. And, it's disappointing, but it is what it is. You got to play the game on the field. And so right now, I think for the CEOs who are interested in hiring for the very best, you're going to have an even bigger pool of talent to choose from.
You mentioned building for the best. You also invest for the best, and I don't mean to rhyme, but when you've talked about your investing in women's sports, you have talked about it as just like a very smart capitalistic move. It's an undervalued asset. What is your estimation for how this asset could grow? Because we publish lists of the Forbes most valuable sports teams, and it's all these NFL teams run by men that are multi-billion dollars. The valuations for women's sports are lower. What's your projection for the next few years?
Well, look, in 2019, it was considered uninvestable. And I was a heretic for saying that I could start a women's professional soccer team and have it one day be worth $1 billion. Today, Angel City's worth just under 300 million. It's been 4.5 years, so good progress. I think we'll see $1 billion women's professional sports team in 5 years.
Will it be soccer? Will it be basketball? Will it be something else?
It will definitely be either soccer or basketball. It will likely,
Put you on the spot there.
If I really have to pick one, it should be basketball. I think it should be basketball. And even if you look at the expansion fees, Cleveland just bought a WNBA expansion for $250 million. That's just the right to own a team. So I think the W will likely be the first one, but we'll give it a good run in women's soccer. And my wife's now an owner of a WNBA team. You might hear some news about me in the not too distant future, but very, very bullish in both those leagues and sports.
What is the most essential lever for hitting that 1 billion? I've talked to other sources about the marketing or the audiences or the in-person attendance. Is there a piece of the ecosystem you're looking at that needs more investment or attention?
Look, the media deals are lagging indicators because those big media deals, which make up the bulk of the value in men's teams, it's going to take longer to accrue because they're multi-year deals. You start growing popularity, you don't see the real bump in the media until that deal resets. So that will be a big part of it. But year to year, the metrics to look at are really revenue. And brand deals, again, for teams also are typically multi-year, but they're in different sort of clumps. So it doesn't quite happen all at once like the media deals do, but those revenue deals are a huge factor. And I think one of the things that folks are going to very quickly learn that we tapped into pretty early, and this is why I produced the Offseason, this is why I produced Athlos, these women athletes are so compelling on social media and their fans are so digital native that a team like ours cannot just build a traditional brand deal where it's a front of kit sponsor like any other soccer team, men's or women's. But we can actually build social media campaigns around brand partners, use the audience of our team, the audience of our players, and generate more revenue for our team and for our players, creating content where our fans live on social media. And it's the same thing, it's the same energy actually that caused me to want to build Inner Circle, which is the social media app that I launched, this was last weekend, specifically for athletes. Because athletes as creators drive so much engagement on platforms like, let's say, Instagram, but they receive such a tiny amount of the revenue for all the engagement they drive. And those platforms are not designed to keep them free of hate and harassment. And if you ask these athletes what's the number one reason you don't spend time on social, even though you should, because it's good for business, it's because of the hate and harassment they receive. And so that is a very, very easy way to make something people want by, again, this is my playbook. I talked to the athletes, I asked them what they would want, and then I built it. And so Inner Circle is one more version of it.
You launched it last weekend. How do you compete with a juggernaut like Instagram on something like that?
One user at a time. I make sure every one of those athletes who signs up and we verify is in a chat with me anytime, with our head of product anytime, and they're giving us real-time feedback. And we're building small. The app today is still only open to track and field athletes. Mm-hmm. We could obviously roll it out to more sports, but we focus on track and field, one, because of all the success we had in Athlos, and two, because those athletes in particular are very engaged on social. And again, unfortunately, because the sport has been so underinvested in, we can move the needle really quickly with weekly cash payouts for the most engaging users. So we've gamified even your just social posting every week by giving them something to compete for. It turns out athletes are great at competing for stuff. And so we make it a brandable cash prize every week. So today, 776 is the brand partner because, well, obviously, but tomorrow that's going to be a place for a brand to come in and say, okay, We want to be the one associated with putting money in the pockets of these athletes, which aligns us and endears us to their fans and gets our messaging out there in a way that's actually integrated with the platform instead of just putting it out on the corner of the screen.
776 also launched with you a podcast called Business Dads.
That's right.
Can you tell me why you wanted to add podcast hosts to your list of many titles?
You know, the world needed another podcast, and I felt like I was the guy to do it. I wanted to create a show that normalized very successful men talking about trying to juggle being successful in their careers and being successful as fathers. I felt like this is something working women have juggled for decades. They've been asked about all the time. But it wasn't until I became a dad that I actually found this whole line of conversation with men who I really, really respected in many different fields that never existed before. It was like I entered this new club where all of a sudden I was like, wait, you're a self-made billionaire and you really love being a dad? Like, why is this not normalized? And I just didn't find very many resources out there talking about it. And I think when you have this vacuum where you have a generation of young men who I think are feeling especially disenfranchised, who are turning even more so to voices they find on the internet, often not the healthiest, especially when it comes to masculinity, I want to give them alternatives that show them unequivocal greatness across many industries, right? Business, sports, entertainment, fashion, doesn't matter. And hear from men who have objectively done things that they should or could conceivably aspire to do themselves, and talk so earnestly and so thoughtfully about their responsibilities as being a dad. And turns out there are lots of dudes very, very happy to come on this podcast and talk about it, and it's been a lot of fun.
I listened to one where you were talking about, with your guest, making breakfast in the morning, and he sounded so excited about his pancakes or what he was making for his child.
Yes.
And in that interview, you also used the phrase building human intelligence versus artificial intelligence, and it feels like even in this age of AI, a lot of your projects seem to have human intelligence at the center. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's because I'm not smart enough to do the other kind. I think the world we're entering now is one where thankfully for me, like raw intelligence is going to be commoditized. Like the things that are going to matter, the things I care about teaching my kids are less about, say, capital I intelligence. Again, that's going to be a commodity. You're going to be able to find the answer for anything. You're going to have a PhD level brain at your beck and call whenever you have a question about something. I want to make sure that she understands and has agency, that she has a kind of creativity, that she has a kind of empathy. That emotional intelligence, I think, is actually going to be a lot more valuable. Taste is going to be even more valuable. There are still going to be realms where humans will need to be excellent. And I'm excited for that because I actually think a lot of those things are the things that kind of make life more enjoyable as far as I'm concerned. And if we've now been able to delegate the sort of raw horsepower and intelligence to an AI, I actually think it gives us more time to do things that make us more human.
I love that thesis on what AI could do for our lives. As a tech founder, do you have a specific thesis on what AI could do for business or entrepreneurship in the next 1, 2, or 5 years?
Yeah, we're seeing it happen quick. I interviewed Sam Altman at a Robinhood summit, I think it was a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago now, and he said, I have a running bet on how long it'll be until there's a one-person billion-dollar company. And so that's how he was thinking a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. You're already starting to see like the one person, call it, tens of millions dollar company, right? You're already starting to see the power. And I think you're going to see entrepreneurship look different in these years to come. Smaller teams are going to be able to do so much more than they could have done even just 5 years ago. And what it will do for those teams, they'll feel like Navy SEALs, right? They'll be empowered. They'll have tightly knit cultures. They'll be able to just go so competitively against larger incumbents. They can't compete as quickly. And it'll be infuriating for them, but it'll be great for the Davids. And so we're in the business of funding the Davids. And I love being in a business like that where they can do more, take on less capital, grow more intentionally, get profitable sooner. Like, I actually think there's never been a better time to be a high agency, empathetic, tasteful founder CEO with an idea.
That is wonderful optimism. I
can't help it.
Excellent note to end on. Thank you so much for
Great.
sitting down with us.
My pleasure, Maggie. Thank you for having me here in Abu Dhabi.